kids. Every time I got pregnant, I prayed that it would make me feel like a female. Prayed that somehow being pregnant would make me into a girl, because I knew I wasn't inside. I almost killed myself 9 years ago this month. And by almost killed myself, I was sitting in front of a line of pill bottles. And I had a large glass of water right there. And it was only some movement where there couldn't be movement that caught my eye in a mirror. And I turned and looked at that mirror and I said, how can you do this? What the hell are you thinking? How can you do this to your kids? Even if they hate you, they're better off knowing that their mother lives as a man than having a gravestone to visit. I made the decision that night. My life ended. My life ended being her. I'm still that same person, but I stopped living behind this shell that wasn't me. I found a group of people online on this alternative lifestyles website, a bunch of trans people, 99.9% of them were trans women. They were all like, oh, you're so cute. You're a little trans boy. I'm like, no, I'm not a boy. Don't call me boy. I'm not somebody for you to pat on the head. I may only be 5'3", but don't pat me on the damn head. And one of them told me I had no clue what she was going through. And I said, look at the support you have in this room. Because this was a room with 50 people in a chat room. And probably 40 of them were trans women. And then there's one little trans guy. And the other 9 are chasers who are out there to hit up the trans women because they want to get laid. And I wrote this poem. The heart that beats within my chest knows the same struggles as thine. For the body didn't match the soul. The face in the mirror wasn't mine. Over 30 years ago, you see, a little girl came into this world. On the surface, she was no different than any other. Her hair was in ringlet curls. That little girl was born like each of you, normal, yet so different. Brought up in a world taught nothing of our kind, only intolerance. She was Daddy's tomboy, gladly marked with more scars than any little girl should bear. Mama made her cry, dressing her in clothes that didn't work, ones she hated to wear. Defiant, headstrong, stubborn, she grew, living dual, even as a child. People read her internal struggles wrong. The teachers, they just called her wild. Decades later, can you believe just how much she has changed? Finally, he, not she, with new clothes, a new look, even a different name. Daddy says I love you, no matter what. My children, they just rave. What a change. Now Mama throws the crying fit, knowing that I shave. I'll be done in just 30 seconds. I know I'm running long. I want to point out, in my opinion, the activist that's sitting in this room that has the biggest chance of changing this world right now, he's sitting in that second row. He's 13 years old. He spoke up in front of a classroom where he could have sat silent. A 13-year-old kid. He's listening to kids talk about that young lady in Hillsborough, calling her a freak, telling her she didn't say that she didn't belong. And he raises his hand and he goes, I have something to say. Well, the teacher knew who I was. So she told him, sit up on your desk. Don't sit at it. Sit up on it. And he talked for 20 minutes. And of the 16 kids that were preaching hate, 15 of them walked out of that classroom apologizing to him. 15 of them walked out of that classroom with their eyes opened. That's 15 less haters. That's 15 people whose minds were changed from 1 kid speaking up. You each have the ability to make that change. If you do it, if you make the change, if you choose love, not hate, if you choose an open mind, not a closed one, we can blow this world apart. And we can make it so kids don't have to be tormented in school. They don't have to be dragged out of the bathroom that they belong in. Closet won't exist. I hope for my grandkids, if any of them are gay or lesbian or trans or queer or bi or asexual or whatever, that it doesn't matter. There isn't a closet for them. I've got an 18-year-old daughter who was president of Washington's GSA. She's now going to homeschool with a full ride, pre-med. She's changing the world. I've got a daughter that's in the Explorers. She wants to be a cop so that she can change the world and make sure that they treat trans people right. And I got a little kid in middle school who stops the whole class. That's my activism. Starts at home. Starts with raising our kids to be open-minded. I'm here under a pseudonym tonight. I won't tell you my name. Because just me being here, I risk my job, which means I risk putting food on my family's table. I have to lie about my wife every day when I go to work. My parents think that I'm a freak. My boss thinks that I'm married to a woman named Brandy.
Princess.
Complete with shaved head and tattoos. I don't want my kids to ever have to live in a closet. I don't want the closet to exist for my grandkids. We change that by education. We change that one person at a time, sometimes 15.
Well, my name is Jill Aul, and can you hear me? I thank you for inviting me here tonight, and I'm privileged and proud to serve on this panel. I'd just like to share a story briefly. When my child came out as a freshman in high school, we lived in St. Charles County, and I taught in an elementary school that was 5 minutes away, and my own kids went to that school. So I was really well known. I used to joke that I couldn't even go to the grocery store braless because I always was running into people that I would see. But we knew that because our daughter at the time was active in the drama club in her high school, that she had a lot of other friends who were gay and lesbian, and that they had parents. So we found out about this national organization that was a support group for parents, but we discovered that there was not a chapter in our county, so we started one. And we decided to have our first meeting in one of the public library meeting rooms. So I was really nervous about it because even though St. Charles County and St. Charles City is not tiny and rural as your area is, it's still really quite conservative. It's amazing how just crossing that bridge can really make a difference. And again, you know, as a school teacher, I kind of felt like I had a spotlight on me sometimes, and I had to lead, you know, a good example and be kind of more conservative outwardly than I really was, and I was just nervous. I didn't know what was going to be ahead of us. So I walked into the library and I asked the librarian, who really kind of looked like a stereotypical librarian. I think she had a bun and her glasses were down on her nose. And I filled out the paperwork and handed it back to her, and she looked at it, and I held my breath, and she said, "Well, I think I'll come to your first meeting because I have a gay son." And I mean, it was just mind-blowing. And that example has been typical of our experience over the whole past 10 years with our involvement in the community. At our very first meeting, which was mostly comprised of our child's friends' parents. I remember saying, it was in July, and I remember saying, we don't want to march in any parades, we don't want to be involved in anything, we really want to just support each other. At the time, we were concerned with the sleepover because our child was a freshman in high school and coming out as a lesbian. But by the following June, my husband and I carried the P flag banner down Grand Avenue, and we really have never looked back. We have participated in the St. Louis Pride Festival every year for the past 10 years in the parade and tabling for P flag. And so it was 9 years later, well, 8 years later, I guess, when our child came out again, and this time it's again. So now we are the proud parents of 2 sons instead of parenting a lesbian daughter and a straight son. We now have a trans son as well. But I was sitting at the P flag table at Pride St. Louis in the summer of 14 with a newer P flag mom who had just recently joined our group, and she lives in Wentzville, and she casually said to me, "Is there anything like this in St. Charles?" And when I finished laughing, she said, "Well, I wonder why." And I said, "Well, I don't know why, but I've never been the kind of person to just let things go. When there's an idea put out there, I'm usually the one who ends up in charge of it." And that's exactly what happened. We decided to have a family picnic for our P flag chapter because we thought, our laws are changing, DOMA has been overturned, we have a lot of, our network has grown, and we know a lot of LGBT people that are in St. Charles County. So let's have a family picnic and invite everybody who's ever been affiliated with our chapter, which is really a couple hundred people. They don't all come to the meeting, but that's how many names I have in my contacts list. And let's just have an organizational meeting and see if anybody else might want to help plan this family picnic. We envision maybe having a pavilion in the park with some rainbow balloons, and maybe we thought we could get a local restaurant to donate some food or something. So we planned, ironically, a meeting in the same library, and 35 people showed up to help plan Pride St. Charles. And that's the moment when we knew that we were dealing with a much bigger event, and that this was something whose time had definitely come. At that first meeting, this is really what I really mainly want to share with you. There was a man in his early 30s who grew up in Troy, Missouri, which is a very small town, more rural. It's in Lincoln County. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he talked so passionately that night about his miserable experience growing up in Troy as a gay high school student, and he was the only gay person he knew, and it was just terrible. When he finally came out to his parents, it didn't go well. And when he heard through social media that there was going to be some kind of a pride event planned for St. Charles, he just knew he had to get involved because he wanted to give back. He said that night that he doesn't want anybody else to have to go through what he went through. And there was another woman there, a lesbian who was in her 60s, and she talked about marching in a pride parade 30 years prior, I don't remember what city it was in, and had eggs thrown at her as she marched along. And that's why she was there. This was repeated all the way around the table when we introduced ourselves, and I asked everybody to state their name and just say what brought you here. And so that is really what I wanted to share with you. As it turns out, we had 101 vendors at our festival. We had all day long entertainment. We had a dozen food trucks, and we don't have exact attendance numbers because it was held on the campus of the St. Charles Community College, and there's lots of different entrances to the campus, but we estimated there were at least 3,500 people who showed up for our festival, and it poured rain for about the first 3 hours. It didn't keep anybody away. I mean, it was just the most affirming, happy, joyous, wonderful thing, and all day long, we heard the same stories from people thanking us and telling us how thrilled they were that and how shocked they were that something like this could take place in St. Charles. Now, we're hard at work planning Pride St. Charles 2016, and there are little save the date cards on the table just outside the door. Shameless plug. It'll be on June 18th, and we've moved it to a much bigger, beautiful site. It's called the 370 Lakeside Park in St. Peter's, and it's just a beautiful venue with much more room for entertainment. And we can, since we're not on the campus, we can have a marriage ceremony. We can have a beer vendor. We can have just a lot more. There are a lot less restrictions and a lot more space. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you, and just to echo what we've heard from so many other people up here, that if you come out and if you talk to the people in your own little circle, it can really be far-reaching. And if you just do what you can to change attitudes and share your views with people that are willing to listen, then that's the way we change the world. So thank you again for inviting me.
Okay, now we're going to take some questions from the audience. Does anybody have any questions in particular for any of our panelists? Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I had a friend, well, my name's Jamie, by the way. I have a friend who I've known for years in high school, and before that, his name's Caleb Higgins, and he went to California when we were 18, and it was always my kind of dream to go with him, but due to financial reasons and life getting in the way and lots of other things, I wasn't able to do that. And the reason I chose Denver, I was kind of tossing it up between Denver and Nashville for a while, but the reason I chose Denver is because I have connections there in the music community, in the queer community, and trans community in particular. So for me personally, it seemed like the best option, and plus, you know, I was weighing it against Nashville, and I don't know if any of you know the laws and things like that about obtaining hormone replacement therapy, or HRT. But in Missouri, it's kind of difficult because you have to see a therapist for about 3 months, and then they can write you a letter to an endocrinologist who then has another final say as to whether or not you get treated for hormones, and that's the same in Tennessee. And so while Nashville would be a great place for me to go as a musician, Colorado is a better state to go for me as a person, because Colorado has an informed consent policy, and I'm not sure if it's statewide or they're select doctors, but you can pretty much just go to a doctor and they, you know, if you sign some papers and say, this is what I'm doing, help me with what I need to do. And so while I would really love to move west, because I really have loved California since before I knew what it was, I mean, all the rock stars and stuff hang out there, I just, it wasn't financially in the cards, and I had connections in Denver, so that's why I chose that. Thank you.
And Denver's an awesome city, so it's a good choice.
You know, there are certain pretty flower shops that are open there.
Right. It's just an awesome place. So to piggyback on what I definitely, as soon as I graduated from college, I was like, I'm out. I've got to get out of here. And I loved living in the city. But I was raised in a small town, and this is where I was raised, that I wanted to come back and make, you can either move to a place that's less crappy or make where you live less crappy. And so I decided to make where I live.
Background as well. When I came out, I had children. I had a kindergartner. I had a second grader, and I had a fifth grader, all in elementary school. So I had to deal with a divorce, and fighting for custody in Franklin County. Let's just say that's like swimming through chump waters with a whole bunch of sharks.